develop capital formation to bring more meatpacking operations into our country. So that was duly noted. And with that, I will recognize the gentle lady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Scanlon, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Cicilline. Concentration and consolidation in our food supply chain has been shown now to pose a serious threat to our food markets, the food industry workforce, and financial stability for the American consumer. Our ability to provide adequate and nutritious food to consumers is a matter of national security. So we need to act to ensure that the continuity of the industry is assured. The pandemic, as with so many other things, has highlighted the fragility of the US food supply chain as meat processing plants, grocery stores, seed and grain markets, all of which have become steadily more concentrated in recent decades, were unable to meet demand, and Americans were left at various times with empty shelves and increasing costs. In a resilient and healthy food supply system, redundancy and diversity of suppliers would have helped to insulate consumers from the harmful costs or supply impacts of the pandemic and other similar events. More sources, processors, and distributors of food means that if something goes wrong in one part of the market, there are plenty of competing businesses to pick up the slack. In speaking with supermarket owners and operators and others in our food supply chain, we've seen the direct impact of industry concentration when something goes wrong, such as a COVID surge, leading to workers getting sick or having to take time off to take care of family members, which then reduces supply, which then increases prices. Additionally, in studying the concentration of the food supply chain, it's so important that we look at the impact on labor markets. Workers in meat processing and grocery industries have seen elevated levels of risk during the COVID-19 pandemic. But because just a few companies control such large shares of the grocery and meat processing markets, they're able to depress wages and subject their workers to poor working conditions. What we end up getting are companies in the national grocery chains that rely on a really perverse form of corporate welfare. They have a business model that relies on paying employees so little that they're forced to rely on food stamps and other government benefits. And studies show that the families of employees of some of these corporate giants often go hungry, while the employees are literally surrounded by food. This isn't just a perverse way to run a grocery business in the wealthiest nation in the world, it's immoral. We must have a food system in the US that respects the dignity of workers, is resilient even in the face of unprecedented supply chain shocks, and that provides affordable, quality food for all Americans. Addressing concentration within these markets is an important way to ensure a more secure food supply chain. And so I look forward to discussing with you some solutions to these problems. Ms. Johnson, I've spoken to independent and small grocers in my district about their challenges in getting supplies, and they've spoken at length about the impact of market concentration on the meat industry. And they were overwhelmingly of the opinion that the price increases we've seen lately have had a large part to do with that concentration because it's drastically reduced the number of meatpacking plants and suppliers. And then when the pandemic hits those places, they don't have enough people to produce the pounds of protein that they're used to. And the need for social distancing further reduced their ability to produce the pounds of protein that they were used to. So the law of supply and demand then causes prices to rise. Both you and Mr. Needler have mentioned enforcement of existing antitrust laws as a tool to address shortages. Can you explain how that helps and what Congress might do or need to do to improve enforcement or give additional enforcement tools?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman, and I couldn't agree more with your comments. I think what's helpful here is to think in terms of fair and affordable prices and get out of this high-low dynamic. Because one point that we often miss is that the consumers who are struggling to afford food are also the workers who are having their wages depressed. So we need to align our enforcement strategies and complementary policies to ensure fair outcomes. It's not necessarily the case that we always want to seek the lowest possible price if that comes at the expense of health, of environmental protection, and foists other costs onto the public. That diverts public resources away from other social problems that urgently need attention, and it allows corporate profits to skyrocket. So we need to ensure that our enforcement approach addresses the tendency to externalize costs and to put those onto the public, and then at the same time invest in public policies that will support our workers and our consumers in ensuring that everyone can afford the food they need.
Thank you. I see my time has expired. I'll yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the ranking member of the Antitrust